Now that we've got a little history out of the way and talked about the importance of sanitation, wash your damn hands, we thought we'd get into the basics of what you should be wearing in a kitchen and why. While many restaurants and food service institutions already have uniform standards in place, there are a lot of elements they have in common. They can also vary quite a bit depending on the type of cooking being done, the culinary traditions being drawn from on the menu, the format of the venue, and whether or not it is part of a larger organization or corporation or just a small mom and pop type of operation. The purpose of standardized uniforms, when they are used, is to evoke a deeper sense of being a part of a larger team in the cooks and servers. Hello again and welcome to Hospitable You and the Introduction to Culinary Arts video series Part 3, Parts of Your Uniform. I'll be your host for this series, Chef Jack. Let's start with the most basic operations: diners, cafes, buffets, and cafeterias. These types of establishments usually have a very basic type of uniform, if any at all. As the public-facing employees, the servers and bussers, might be requested to wear a uniform, the kitchen staff usually is not. Basic clothing like t-shirts, jeans, and sneakers, or work boots along with some sort of head covering like a baseball cap are usually the only requirements. Aprons are almost always provided, but beyond side towels, those are most likely the only thing provided by the employer. In some cases, a branded head covering is provided, but not always. In these establishments, the cooking is usually rigorously timed, tightly standardized, and not very open to interpretation or creativity from the kitchen staff. Recipes are locked in place, and straying from them is frowned upon. There are exceptions, of course. Casino buffets have a much more involved uniform and interactive cooking techniques. Outside of those types of organizations, because they are part of a larger corporate structure, there are generally very few uniform guidelines in diners, cafes, buffets, or cafeterias. Next, we have the chain restaurant like Applebee's, Outback Steakhouse, TGI Fridays, and Olive Garden. Even more deeply standardized recipes and procedures, and even some proprietary seasoning mixes and strictly standardized recipes coming from a central corporate commissary kitchen. The flour mix used to bread the bloomin' onions, for example, is, or at least was in the 90s when I worked there, shipped to each Outback Steakhouse outlet ready to use. In these types of kitchens, the staff is probably given a branded t-shirt to wear, and branded ball caps are sometimes also given out or used as rewards for winning Employee of the Month. The uniforms in these types of kitchens is pretty similar to the others we've talked about. Otherwise, they are more likely to provide branded apparel for the staff. The high-concept menu with a casual field type of restaurant is a fairly recent development in the culinary world and has its own uniform depending on the property. With a relaxed dress code but a very serious culinary approach, these are a very interesting type of food service venue. The staffs in these types of operations are usually much more serious about culinary techniques and ingredients than the others that we've already talked about. Borrowing from deeply studied traditions the chef is passionate about and having pretty exacting standards, but presented to the public in a way that is much less stuffy than the popular conception of a French fine dining, white tablecloth type of dining room. T-shirts and jeans with work boots are pretty standard here, with notepads, thermometers, pens, the ubiquitous Sharpie, and some sort of stylish but unstuffy apron rounding out the look. Blue aprons with vertical pinstripes is a popular current trend, and a lot of these implements carry over into our next category. Fine dining restaurants and culinary schools tend to have a similar uniform. White chef coats, houndstooth fitted pants, white aprons and side towels, pens, Sharpie, notepad, thermometer, toques, and sometimes a neckerchief, typically not mandatory though. Some restaurants may not require toques or only require them of the sous chefs and above, but they are still pretty common. These are the white tablecloth, old-school fine dining restaurants. It is highly recommended that any serious student of food and the culinary arts work in a place like this for at least a few years. This is where you learn more than anywhere else and really hone your basic skill set. So let's go over each piece of a typical uniform and talk briefly about each one's function, starting at the top. Head covering. These can range from ball caps to do-rags, naval-style caps or pillbox hats, toques, floppy hats, Japanese hachimaki, or simply a bandana. The purpose is mostly twofold: to help keep sweat out of the cook's eyes and to keep their hair contained and out of the food. This is important because both of these things could present sanitation issues. The variety will vary wildly depending on the venue, the level of formality, and even the chef's own preferences. Next, we'll talk about shirts, chef coats, and jackets. The primary part of most uniforms, it could take the form of a t-shirt, polo shirt, French chef's coat, Japanese gi, or whatever the venue decides is in line with the image they want to project. So again, these can vary widely, but tend to fall into these distinct categories. The purpose for this is to have a sanitary outfit for the cook and chef to wear and to create a more cohesive team environment. The third part of the uniform is the undershirt. Many places require an undershirt, a white t-shirt or tank top worn under the main uniform or jacket. This is to help absorb sweat, odors, and also provide an extra layer. Older chef whites that have been washed a few dozen times can sometimes be somewhat sheer, allowing or forcing your coworkers to see what, if anything, is under the coat. Next part of the uniform is the pants: baggies, houndstooth, and checks. Baggies refers to a baggy style of chef pants. Checks refers to a black and white checkered pattern commonly found on chef's pants. And houndstooth is pretty much just an alternate form of checks, a black and white pattern. They should be comfortable, easy to move in, and made of a light material that can breathe in hot kitchen environments. Baggies tend to have a simple drawstring, while checks and houndstooth pants tend to have snaps and a zipper, though they can sometimes have a drawstring too. At the bottom of the uniform, we come to non-slip shoes. These are essential in modern kitchens. Most kitchens have a durable tile floor, so dropped pots don't crack and chip the flooring as easily. But this also means they are hard and can be slick if water, oil, or worse, both are spilled. And any line during service is going to have water and oil on the floor. Non-slip shoes along with rubber floor mats will help you navigate a busy kitchen without worrying as much about falling while carrying dangerous items like knives or hot pans and pots. And over all of this, we have aprons. A lot of places have a simple white bib apron or bar-style aprons that tie around the waist. These are meant to provide an extra layer of protection and sanitation, keeping your shirt or coat clean by absorbing any splashes, drips, animal blood while butchering, and help prevent any other juices from staining your coat or shirt. Some chefs like to have designer, throwback, or rugged-looking aprons, and these can add to the image the venue is trying to project just as much as the rest of the uniform. Aprons are typically meant to be taken off after a particularly messy task and changed for a new one, though that may depend on the venue and how tightly the chef needs to watch his linen budget. Next, we'll talk about dishwashers' uniforms. In a lot of operations, the dishwashers, also known as dish dogs or stewards in a more corporate setting, wear uniforms that are similar or identical to the line cooks, but not in all operations. In some operations, the dishwashers are allowed to wear whatever they want or whatever they don't mind getting wet and filthy. And in some operations, they are provided with a white, button-down, short-sleeve shirt. Yet again, this is something that depends largely on the setting and the venue. They are also typically provided with plastic aprons to help keep dry, along with heavy-duty dish gloves, to help protect them from the 180-degree water they are constantly having to navigate. I have seen creative dishwashers take garbage bags and punch a head hole in the bottom and armholes out the corners to fashion their own raincoats to maneuver through the dish pit and pot sink areas. We will have an entire lesson dedicated to these unsung heroes of the restaurant industry soon enough. Another important part of your uniform is your note-taking implements. Essential to the serious cook or chef, taking notes on conversations or writing down inspiration as it happens is crucial in a busy kitchen. You're probably not going to remember details or the conversation at all by the end of the night or when that information will be relevant. A simple pocket-sized ring-bound notepad and a pen and a Sharpie are all that's needed here and are important parts of your uniform. Most chef coats, jackets, and cook uniforms will have a breast pocket to keep the notepad and a sleeve pocket specifically designed for pens, markers, and our last item, digital or analog instant read thermometers. Another essential tool for maintaining sanitary conditions by making sure that meats are cooked thoroughly, hot items are being held hot enough, and cold items are being kept cold enough. You don't want to be caught without one when the health inspector shows up. Which brings us to our first installment in this series of Focus on Food Safety. At the end of every lesson, we'll be focusing on a different aspect of sanitation, how to go about it properly, and why it's crucial to the hospitality industry. This time we'll be looking at the temperature danger zone. This is the range of temperatures at which harmful bacteria and pathogens grows most readily, typically recognized as being between 40 degrees Fahrenheit, 4.4 degrees Celsius, and 140 degrees Fahrenheit, or 60 degrees Celsius. If you are in an operation where foods are being held hot, like sauces in a steam well, or buffet, banquet, and catering operations that keep food in hot boxes, these items need to be maintained at a minimum temperature of 140 degrees Fahrenheit or higher to remain safe for consumption. Some items don't last that long in a hot box, like fried food that can lose its crunch or get soggy, or meats that can dry out. The health department doesn't care about this. That is up to your own internal quality control and service standards. As long as the food remains safe to consume, they don't really care if it becomes unappetizing. It's on you to decide if you want to continue serving it. Please don't. It's probably not going to get anybody sick if it's maintained at a temperature of 140 degrees or higher, but you probably don't want to serve a grilled chicken breast that's been sitting in a hot box uncovered for 3 hours. A piece of drywall would be easier to chew and swallow at that point. On the other side of the spectrum, we have cold items, ready-to-eat foods or components of dishes, like salads, uncooked vegetables, dressings, condiments, portion pastas and meats, and raw proteins all need to be held at a temperature between 40 degrees Fahrenheit and 32 degrees Fahrenheit. Any lower and they'll freeze, obviously, but any higher puts them in the temperature danger zone, and they can't be left there for too long before becoming unservable. The health department says 4 hours at room temperature, but that time decreases the higher in the temperature danger zone that goes because some microbes multiply faster at higher temperatures. Beyond this time frame, food items could develop colonies of bacteria and pathogens that could get your guests violently ill. This is not only bad for business, but it's objectively immoral to serve food that you think might be able to get someone sick. And just because it looks fine and smells fine doesn't mean you should gamble with someone else's health. I have many sayings and pet peeves in my kitchen that you will learn throughout this series. So here's my first saying to make sure that a food item doesn't make anyone ill. When in doubt, throw it out. Admittedly, I didn't come up with that one on my own. It's been circulating around the industry for decades at least, but it is nevertheless true. Oh, yeah, and wash your hands! Today we talked about the different parts of kitchen uniforms. All the most common styles of hats, coats and shirts, pants, shoes, and aprons found in kitchens, and the type of operation that typically uses each variant. We talked about the dishwasher's uniforms as well, and highlighted the important implements a serious line cook or chef should have on their person at all times in a kitchen. Our sanitation focus this time was the temperature danger zone, what it is, where it is, and why and how it is so dangerous. Next time we will be discussing kitchen knives, the different types of metals, styles of blades, what they were developed for and where, blade maintenance, and different styles and approaches to sharpening. So we'll see you next time. Hospitable U is produced by Hospitable Productions LLC and all of the people listed here. If you want to help keep Hospitable U free for everyone, please consider donating to our PayPal or become a patron on Patreon. Thank you for watching, and thank you for helping us create a more hospitable you.